to everyone to our HyperNest Podcast. Today we are going to discuss about one of the biggest problem or biggest challenge in DeFi, that is liquidity fragmentations. We have liquidity, but it's on many chain. There are a lot of bridges, of course, and there are a lot of dexes. So if you want to move and swap something and going from chain A to chain B, it's always a very, very big problem. So there is slippage. The what bridge can you use to get there? What is the simplest way? What is the fastest way? And what is the cheapest way? And today we have the great pleasure actually to discuss with LI.FI and with the head of DeFi in LI.FI, because LI.FI is tackling this problem, and they are the absolute leader in the blockchain world to solve and actually support this liquidity movement from one chain to another. But before we move forward and we get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of LI.FI and we try to study more about this beautiful protocol, I would like to give to Andrei the possibility to introduce himself. Please tell us something about you, Andrei.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Andrei from LI.FI, as many of the builders in the space know me. I've been in the space for, I think, more than 8 years now, and I've been building probably from, like 2018 in the as a builder and also in the interop space. About LI.FI, I guess that, most people or many of the Web3 native users know that we are a price comparison API that offers best price execution on chain. This is the quick intro.
Fantastic. And just for curiosity, how did you get in this beautiful world of DeFi, or the so-called rabbit hole?
Good question. So I guess I started like most people in crypto. I was just interested, in the tech, aka in the money of, I was just graduating back then. So I was working as a student and I had some money on the side. So I wanted to start an e-commerce business on Amazon because dropshipping was so huge back then. Mm-hmm. But I discovered Ethereum because I saw one of those blog posts from Business Insider, which said that the founder of Ethereum is dead, and then 5 minutes later he's actually not dead. So he put up a photo of him with the block number at the time. So I was like, okay, so this picked, so this picked my interest. So I started to look more and more into this, and I was, seeing that the price of Ethereum was, going up 20-30% per day. So I was like, okay, something is here. I started, like most people in 2017, and it's been a whole roller coaster like back then. I don't know if you've been back then in crypto, but it was the ultra wild west. And after a few years, like 2 years, I started to realize that, trading is fine, but I'm probably not the best trader out there. And it's also a very lone, you're a lone wolf, a sole trader. Yeah. So I wanted to build, relationships in the industry. I wanted to build actual products. DeFi wasn't even a thing back then. It was just, the post ICO era. But I started initially building Deus Ex DAO, which is an investment and advisory strategy. And I brought, a lot of like-minded people, very smart people from the industry, from hedge fund managers, CEOs, product managers, generally just builders. So we started to, having a podcast, doing research on chain, doing advisory, writing angel tickets, supporting builders. So I was first also on the investment side in, like the builder part. But then I realized that, look, I actually want to build a product. So I started initially selling a SaaS solution, which was a transparency dashboard. Because back then, you probably remember that Olympus DAO was, having a huge treasury, and there were so many forks or copycats of Olympus DAO, which were also having huge treasuries. And the users were not aware of where's the money actually going, or how is it being spent, or what's the protocol on liquidity. So I worked for that for a few months, and then I was so interested in the interop space, very very interested. I actually set up calls and meetings during one conference with all of the biggest protocols that are right now on the market, and I started working in this specific sector because I thought that it's very, very interesting and it's solving one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problem that blockchains generally have. So yeah, that's how I ended up in this sector, and I've been with LIFI now I think for 3 years actually, which is in crypto probably like 10 years,
Yeah,
like for comparing it to a more traditional market. But it's been a hell of a ride so far.
yeah, it's a roller coaster, man. But I completely also see myself in your story. I also entered for the tech in 2000, end of
Yeah.
2016, 2017, when there was not even DeFi. There was a lot of Wild West, a lot of people with big guns going around. So it was an interesting place to be, at that point. Going in the direction of LIFI. So LIFI, someone define LIFI as to move everything to everywhere, right? So there is aggregation of bridges, of course, aggregation of I think dexes, dex aggregator, maybe even messaging standards. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about it? So how does it work? This incredible system.
Yeah, sure. So you can compare the best prices across all DeFi liquidity. So you're getting the best price execution for any swaps and any bridging across EVM chains, across non-EVM chains like Solana, Bitcoin, and alt VMs. And we're enabling trading across all DEX aggregators, bridges, and intent systems, and save hundreds of hours in terms of developer work. And I like to give the example for any user of Web3 that hasn't heard about LIFI, is that if you ever done a transaction in crypto, it is very, very likely that you've used LIFI at one point, because we're everywhere. We have Jumper.exchange, which is our B2C interface, which has a bunch of users, hundreds of thousands of monthly active users. We are powering the bridging in MetaMask, Robinhood Wallet, Phantom Wallet. We're powering the deposits into Hyperliquid. We're powering swaps on Ethena. So if you are, somewhat of an active Web3 user or DeFi user, it is very likely that you've interacted with LIFI at one point.
Absolutely, and I mean, also from my side, I believe that it's super effective. Sometimes I find the best price execution even on the same chain, even if I don't need to swap. I'll just check and say, oh, actually, this is very good. Let me go in that direction.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's interesting that you're saying that. So, LIFI has been uh, categorized as cross-chain only, but actually, our distribution of pure cross-chain versus same chain is 50-50. We have many more dexes and solvers and same chain liquidity venues than bridges. Obvious, for the obvious reasons, because it's integrating a bridge is a lot harder than integrating a dex or a dex aggregator. So we are the one of the main cross-chain aggregators, but we are also have a big portion of the same chain swaps market.
yeah. What can LiFi do? Of course, we can swap. Of course, we can bridge. Probably we can wrap and unwrap, I guess. Is there anything else that it's possible to do with your open architecture?
Yeah, so you know, besides this, and also one level above this, you have intent-based systems, which are also part of swapping and bridging, which but is just a different architecture. But to answer specifically, besides swapping, bridging, wrapping, and unwrapping, we can also zap. And zaps are, a huge part of our architecture. Now, how do we define a zap? We define a zap as a contract call. So, for example, you wanna, the best example is probably Hyperliquid. If you want to deposit right now into Hyperliquid and you don't have the native stablecoin on Arbitrum, you will have to do a swap plus a deposit, and the deposit is the actual contract quote. So if you want to expand cross-chain, this will be swap, bridge, swap, so swap on the source chain, bridge, and swap on the destination chain, and then have an actual contract quote, which a contract quote can be anything from minting a token to depositing to having an LP position, whatever. It interacts with a contract. And this is a ZAP. A ZAP is a very powerful tool for all the builders that want to offer this to their users, because it oversimplifies everything. So the user doesn't have to do, I think, just think for a second. For an LP, you have the swap, the bridge, the swap, then you have to buy 2 different tokens, and then you have 2 LP. So it's like 7 steps combined all into one step. So I think that I think that ZEPs are a very powerful tool.
Absolutely necessary, Otherwise, okay, you need to, decide the range. Then according to the range, you need to decide what the proportion of the
Exactly.
one token of another token. Maybe you do a big swap. In the meantime, the proportion in the pool change. Pain. But yes, thanks a lot for providing me this information. But how does it work? In terms of process. So as far as I know, there is an off-chain router that does basically a lot of the magic and calculate all the different options. So, okay, cool. I see you. I think for a second there was a difference in your background.
Yeah, I'm not sure why, because I had a bit of unstable.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Are you seeing me properly?
Yes, I can see you and hear you properly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I can repeat the question. So I was asking to you in terms of process. I
Yeah.
think that LIFI have an off-chain router that calculate a little bit all the different possible routes, and then there is the execution, right? But how does it work? I mean, this is just my idea or my intuition about it. How does it work, behind the curtain?
Yeah, so we have a routing algorithm that does everything that you have described. So we have to call all the bridges and all the DEXs and all the DEX aggregators directly. So that's a bunch of API calls that we're doing, and we have over, I think at this point, over 100 liquidity sources that we are calling, because think about it, if even if we have we have our the LIFI DEX aggregator, but we have also 1inch and Odos and a bunch of other DEX aggregators and a few individual DEXs, plus I think 18 bridges on 40 different chains. So there's a lot of API calling happening, and we have very strict restrictions on the response time and the gas intensity that those have. And after we're calling all of them, we have to sort them, and this is what our magic sauce is the routing algo. So we have to pick and choose based on how fast the actual response time is, to offer the best price quote based on the actual price, so the output, based on the gas intensity, and based on the speed of execution, because we want to offer optionality to the user. If
Yep.
one route might be slower than the other, but might be a lot cheaper, so the user is free to choose which one is the best for them.
Yeah, I love that. I love this possibility. I always check, in Jumper Exchange, you have basically all different options. You see, this is fast, this is expensive. So I think it's very, very cool. Okay, I obviously this solution is not needed more. It's super needed, right? It's necessary, I think, for survival of our beloved DeFi guys. How does LIFI compare with the competition like Bungie from Socket and Rango, for example?
Yeah, so I would say that a lot of our direct competition has, maybe pivoted to building other products or building their own bridge or their own messaging layer. But just comparing it like purely from a front end perspective, we know and we have the data that we are better in terms of actual quotes. So the the utmost quote that the user is getting is better in 80 to 90% of the time on Jumper, for example, because you mentioned the other two, which are also front end. So we also have a front end, which is Jumper.exchange. But we compare also by having more liquidity sources, more chains, and also better modularity. So you can also zap and build on top of the LIFI smart contract.
Yeah, and that's in the end, I think, what matter, right? So having better execution, less slippage, and potentially even the fastest option. And how does it work in terms of monetization? So does right now LIFI get a fee, or only, I don't know, the wallet that integrate, for example, the LIFI widget get a fee? So how do you produce, financial upside considering you don't have a token, as far as I know?
Yeah, so we monetize at the user level. So we charge a fixed basis point for every transaction. It really depends from case to case. The standard fee that any new integrator will be charged if they sign up in the partner portal is 25 basis points.
I see. Okay. Well, that makes
But
sense.
I think it's also important to mention that we do offer volume discounts. So, for example, if we have a huge dApp that is going to do hundreds of millions of dollars or in volume, then we can have sort of volume discounts to incentivize user growth, because that's also very important for us to have actual volumes passing through.
Of course, that makes sense. All right, let's now that we have a good overview of how LIFI works, let's switch a little bit the gears and let's move a little bit of integrating with LIFI. As you have already mentioned it, you are basically integrated with the top protocols in the world, right? From MetaMask, as you say, to Robinhood, I think Ethena, Hyperliquid. So you're already dominating in terms of integration. So considering that a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are DeFi builders, what are the advantages of integrating with LIFI?
Great question. So I would say that the biggest advantage, and it depends from one case to the other, but the biggest advantage is the fact that the builders have an all-in-one API for their cross-chain and swapping needs. They don't have to integrate. We have 18 bridges, so or more, I think, at this point, because we're adding more and more. So just think how complicated it is to add one bridge and then realize that you have a better bridge out there that you also have to integrate. But then, we have another bridge. Oh, and now you need same chain swaps. So this is very, we have 80 people working on this. So there's a lot of work from the smart contract level to the backend level that goes into building a good cross-chain aggregator. So, we're saving hundreds of developer hours by directly integrating with LIFI.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. And is there also, a possible advantage? I mean, I guess, right, in also attracting or simplifying the life of people that want to send me liquidity. Let's say I need liquidity, right? But I need to have a simple way to receive this liquidity if I am a DeFi protocol, right? So, I mean, I guess obviously that integrating with LIFI is a great advantage. My question on top of that is, do you have any specific case study, right? So, for example, you provided, you facilitated 50 million of liquidity to Ethena, or something on this line.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, the numbers are, obviously public because everything is on chain, but
Yeah.
I can probably say that we facilitated hundreds of millions of dollars in the MetaMask wallet for bridging, and on average, we've won, I don't know, 70 to 90% of those volume flows. For Ethena, again, hundreds of millions of dollars. For Hyperliquid, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not, more than a billion in actual deposits. So for case studies, we are, as I like to say, this example over and over again. If you ever done a cross-chain transaction or a swapping transaction in DeFi, it is, highly likely that you've used LIFI under the hood.
I see. And as you were mentioning before, there is also the possibility to connect these ZAP. So essentially, if I am a vault, for example, I have a vault with an interesting strategy, I can just potentially, use integrate with LIFI, and my user not only can bridge, swap, but they can also do additional contract calls to, and then, for example, minting some stuff and wrapping and rewrapping and things like that, right? So there is possible to create complex interaction to interact with my protocol in one go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, tell me, how many times did you need to do an actual DeFi transaction, like a complicated one, like a deposit thing, and you had to go through, 5 steps,
Every single time, man. Every single time.
Exactly. So why wouldn't you use, an API, or even on Jumper right now, you can directly, wrap and unwrap from different tokens. So it's not only that we're saving time for the developers, but we're saving time for the users, and we're providing a very good cross-chain experience, a very good on-chain experience. When a user onboards in Web3 and they realize that this is overly complicated, why do I have to, find a bridge, and why are there multiple bridges that offer different quotes, and then do a swap, and then find, what's the best swap venue, when you can just go on jumper.exchange and, do it in one go on one interface.
Absolutely. We need to definitely reduce this complexity. So if we want to onboard these 1 billion users, everyone, repeat this mantra, but then we build the systems that are more complex and more complex every day. So completely agree with you. Looking at your website, I think there are three way to integrate with LIFI. One is SDK, I think one is APY, and the other one is just via widget. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it for people listening?
Yeah, sure. So we have the API, which most wallets are using, and we have a wrapper around that, which is the SDK, also very developer friendly. And I would guess that 50% of our customers actually use directly the SDK. And on top of that, we have a very simple, out-of-the-box, plug-and-play widget. I don't have a preference, to be honest. For example, Ethena is using our widget. Wallets are using our API. Many of the DeFi front-end apps are using our SDK. So it comes down to preference and how much work we want to put into it. Because, for the widget, it's instantaneously. Like it could take you anywhere from 1 minute to 2 hours to integrate it, depending on how much customization you want to do over the colors of it and so on. When it comes to the API, well, there you have to, build around the API, and you probably have a very complicated backend as well that, the API has to be plugged into.
I see. So clearly, if you want to have a half an hour solution, a widget is the way to go, right? A little bit changing fonts and color, right? But then you're good to go. Otherwise, you can, of course, integrate a little bit more with your API if you have also, of course, some development power and you know what you're doing clearly. What are the best, let's say, protocols that would integrate with LIFI, and also the other way around? So LIFI would like to be integrated with them. Of course, wallet. I think there is no question about that. But what else?
Yeah, so definitely, wallets is a big one. But anything that has interaction with a smart contract, and, you could argue that banks, why not banks? Banks as well. And even though banks don't directly have client-facing smart contracts, they can have those in the backend for holding custody of crypto and for rebalancing. If they want to rebalance, a portfolio, they don't want to, they want to squeeze out the most output of their swap, and they can do this by using LIFI directly, or Jumper.exchange if they're doing this manually. And we actually know that many of the big exchanges are doing manual rebalancing on chain using Jumper.exchange. So anything that has a smart contract, anything that needs a swap and the bridge for their users, or that it is being needed for their backend or for other more exotic rebalancing matters.
Well, that's pretty, I think, a wide range of protocols, right? So everyone needs swap and bridge. I think it's a lot, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it is a pretty wide range. Wallets are it's definitely the biggest one. All DeFi front end. So if you have a front end that has a lending market and a borrowing market, if you have a DEX, then you can also offer cross-chain swaps, restaking. You want to have zapping directly into the restaking gap. So for example, swap bridge swap and restake directly.
Yeah. Okay. I was reading a little bit about your architecture, and I would like to discuss this point with you. So is this true that if I integrate with LIFI, I can actually decide between the DEX aggregators or solvers or bridges that I want to integrate with me? So I can decide, okay, this is the full packages that you have, but I can decide to get a subset of it according to certain parameters. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So, in more technical terms, and how we define those, is called we have an allow and a deny list. So, an allow list and a deny list. The API, the widget, and the SDK, and our whole tech stack is so modular that you can pick and choose what bridges and what DEX aggregators and what solvers you want to use. We recommend to allow the routing algo to do its own thing and pick the best route. But in some cases, builders have their own preferences. They, like they have done their own research and they don't want to work with, a certain bridge, maybe because it's too centralized, or maybe because of the security assumptions that it had, or maybe they don't want to work with the DEX, out of personal preferences. So yeah, that is, the API is fully customizable. It's very modular. Which is again one of our biggest advantages in the market, because we don't force anything and we don't pick winners. If a DApp or a customer doesn't want to use a certain bridge, they're free to customize it on for their own liking.
Yeah, I really love that. I really love this possibility, right? Because yeah, everyone have a different maybe exactly tolerance for trust assumption or not tolerance for trust assumption. So having this allow list, I think it's very, very transformational. Going to the next point, I think that LIFI always presented itself as a very neutral, platform. This is probably the reason why so many people and actually so many great institutions integrated with you guys. But on the other hand, what I was reading is that LIFI is also building is a solver, if I read it correctly, and are also acquiring a sort of solving infrastructure. I think it's called Catalyst, if also I remember correctly there. How would LIFI keep its neutrality if they're moving essentially horizontally or vertically in this tech stack?
Yeah, great question. So this comes out of the LIFI 2.0 announcement and LIFI 2.0 expansion, and I'll go through what LIFI 2.0 is. So for one, we did acquire Catalyst, which is an intent-based resource lock bridge. Why we've done this and why this goes hand in hand with the LIFI solver, and we will call this the LIFI bridge and the LIFI solver. We are building those, and we actually didn't want to put the effort of building from scratch or pivoting to building our own bridge, because we don't want to be a bridge, we don't want to be a solver. However, we have a need for those tools internally. Why so? Because we have probably one of the most aggressive chain expansion strategies in the ecosystem. We're adding one chain per week as of now. We are, I think, at 40 chains right now. So for this, in order to go to a new chain, we need to knock at all the DEX's doors, the DEX aggregators, and all the bridges to find out, okay, who is gonna be on the next on the next chain. So for that, on many occasions, it's too much of a pain to wait for liquidity to be transmitted to the new chain. So we thought that, okay, why wouldn't we have a backup option for us to actually be faster and move faster to a new chain? So this is why we acquired Catalyst, and for the LIFI solver, and that was a great question of how can we maintain impartiality. I don't think many people know, but we're also running LIFI DAX aggregator. So we're running this for over a year now, and we never pick winners. So we don't incentivize in any way the internal LIFI DAX aggregator. Why we needed the LIFI DAX aggregator? Again, for our chain expansion. Whenever we're going to a new chain, we had to wait for a DAX aggregator to be there. So we were like, okay, we're gonna build our own DAX aggregator, aggregate all the DEXs there, and in case there is a bigger, better one, because there's always going to be a bigger and a better one, we will add that as well. And for example, if we were to incentivize our own internal tooling like the LIFI DEX aggregator, that one would have won probably 80 to 90% of our volume. But the LIFI DEX aggregator in total right now, I think it's at 10%. So we're only using it for its specific purpose. If it can offer a better quote than all the other DEX aggregators, then fine, it will win the quote. But if not, it's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by incentivizing that, because we will not offer the best price for the user, and we never want to do that. We always want to offer the best price for the end user. So the Catalyst announcement, the LIFI solver are all part of our chain expansion strategy, in which we want to be better and faster on going to new chains. And also part of the LIFI 2.0, we've announced our exclusive partnership with Glacis. So what Glacis does, and the product that they've built, is named Airlift. And Airlift is basically aggregation of different token standards. So think of, in crypto, there's so much fragmented liquidity that you have OFTs, you have ISTs, you have CCIP, you have different token standards. And it's very hard to move from, an OFT even to another OFT, or to an ERC20 token, or to an XERC20 token. So we've now working with Glacis and the product named Airlift, in order to aggregate those token standards and have, for example, OFT to ERC20. So we don't have to integrate ourselves every single OFT bridge. And that is again a huge unlock for us, especially for stablecoins, because stablecoins do have in many cases a specific token standard.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for the explanation. Makes a lot of sense. Just to ask an additional follow-up on that, I completely get it that, of course, the LIFI DEX aggregator would help the chain expansion. But how, if you want to spend a couple of more words, how, let's say, your solver or your infra for solvers would help the chain expansion? Basically in the same way, maybe if you can articulate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, sure. So our solver, for example, we won't need to wait for other bridges or for other solvers to go to a new chain. With our own solver, we can front run our own liquidity directly to the said chain and wait until all the other bridges will end up there, because in that way we can move faster and be the first one on the new chain. And that's why we needed our own solver. We are aware that there's always going to be a better bridge or a better solver, but it doesn't matter if they don't offer the liquidity when we need that liquidity in time. So that's why we wanted to have our own internal solver.
I completely understand. It makes a lot of sense. So in this world, speed is also super important.
It is very important.
Basically, bringing the piece of infrastructure to make sure that the cross-chain experience works. So it's pretty remarkable. Okay, and moving forward, we have seen a lot of, every day we see, a lot of innovation. Sometimes we have some technical innovation, but we also see the experience sometimes is lagging behind. How long have we been talking about wallet abstraction, for example, or chain abstraction? There are a lot of abstraction going on. But in the end of the day, often the experience is still very, very clunky and very, very hardcore, very, very difficult, as we were mentioning also before. How do you see the future of cross-chain and cross-chain liquidity?
So it's one of the oldest tales in crypto. So look, I won't sugarcoat this, and I won't say that if we will have a unified cross chain where the user doesn't care and the user doesn't even know that he's on different blockchains. That's just bullshit. It's not gonna happen. Liquidity is very fragmented. We live in a multi-chain world, and we will very likely live in a multi-chain world for at least the next decade in crypto. Why? Because incentives are not aligned. The incentives for VCs and for builders are just not aligned with what the user would need. And even for the user, the incentives are not aligned, because it's great to build another L1. It's great to build another L2 for the VCs, because they have huge valuations. So if they can capture those at the lower valuation, they make money. For the builders and for the actual chains, it's great because they can build the next Solana, the next Ethereum, and also have a lot of financial incentives. And even for the users want to have new shiny chains because they need new shiny tokens. So the financial incentives are not aligned for what in theory, in a utopic world, this would mean for the user, in which the user can do it doesn't need to do a swap or a bridge, because everything is unified and liquidity is flowing seamlessly between every single dApp, like cash, for example. But that's probably not going to happen very soon.
No, it's not. I completely agree with you. It's not going to happen. So as long as a protocol or a dApp, whatever, attract enough attention, they might just spin up their L2, right? As it's already happening, right? So there is also in the end game of Sky to have their chain. Aave, Ethena is launching their L2 together with another real world assets expert. It's just there will be more fragmentation. Deutsche Bank launching an L2, Sony launching another. So it's just there will be definitely more fragmentation in the future. And what do you think will be the best way to approach it? I think LI.FI is already doing a lot of heavy lifting. Do you see anything else to support in general the user experience of users?
Well, I guess that offering a good actual swap experience for the user is what's the most important. So having the lowest slippage possible, having the best quote, having low gas, or for example gasless swaps, it's those small features that make a difference for the user. So in the long run, I think that like being a marketplace, who will win is the one that offers the best features and that can have the best retention for the users.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to ask you about. I was reading also about something like LI.FI fuel, right? So in order to have the gas on the destination chain, maybe you want to say something about it, because it's also super important. Sometimes the experience on some bridge it's so annoying. It's like you don't have gas there, so what? What can I do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So with LIFI fuel, you can basically front run gas as a user to the destination chain in order to, have gas for doing transactions on the destination chain. Besides this, we also just announced gasless swaps on Jumper. So, a gasless swap is exactly, how it's being defined. It's a swap in which we take the gas from the actual output and the user doesn't have to pay. So it's only one signature for the user. Again, the small features, abstracting everything, making everything as seamless as possible, as close to, a real world Web2 sort of banking experience in which, you can open up your app and click send and that's it, without, having to approve 3 transactions and pay gas and also debug and decode and understanding, natural language. What does a transaction mean if you look at the code? The user doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, clicking the code, then pasting it in another place, try to decode
Yeah.
it manually, checking if Rabbi did it correctly or didn't, or whatever, MetaMask did it correct. I don't know, it's still very, very hardcore, man. I completely agree with you. Okay, you mentioned a few times also LIFI 2.0. So what are you cooking, guys? Is there anything else that you're about to deploy? So is there any big innovation apart of what we have already discussed?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, LiFi 2.0, it's pretty huge for us. It unlocks and allows us to grow even more and more by having our own resource lock bridge, by intent resource lock bridge, by having our own solver, by having the ability to aggregate different token standards. And all those, those take time, nothing is, out of the box so far. Well, I mean, okay, we just announced places. We're still working for the LIFI bridge and the LIFI solver, but they're, just around the corner. I do expect them to be live pretty soon. And again, those will help the user to have even better, seamless, faster transactions. And also it will allow us to go faster and be more agile and get on chain sooner, so we can offer a better experience for the user. For us, everything is about the user and the client and making sure that they're happy, and we can maintain them on the front end and have a good relationship with our clients.
I completely see that. So essentially, all these bit and pieces will all get together to create an even better experience, essentially, in the future.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I see. And now, as everyone is doing, basically, there is a lot of attention to the institution and institutional adoption. I think also on your website there is the possibility to say, okay, I'm an institution and I want to have a different type of, I have different needs. Do you want to also unpack a little bit these? So how are you going? Are you interacting with big institutions that need, of course, LIFI, maybe on the back end for I don't know rebalancing or something on this line?
Yeah, I mean, we are working with DeFi apps that are using us in the back end, so not in a front end perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For bigger institutions, I guess that we do work with a few big institutions, but they are stablecoin issuers, and they also have a distribution their own for their own users. So even big institutions, they want to grab market share and they want to grab users. So with Paxos, for example, we have the widget or the SDK for them for the stable coins swaps. So I wouldn't say that institutions are focused on the back end. I would say that they actually want to grab more market share and they want to have more users.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course, of course. But I would still probably, integrate with you guys if they need to automatize certain specific, maybe if they need to manage their treasury or if they need to manage, certain specific, um, treasury rebalance or something on this line, probably, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And in general, what would you say? What would you say to builders that are listening to this podcast about LIFI and integrating with LIFI? So, is there anything that you would like to share with them? Maybe a call to action?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the call to action, and I think I've described LeFi, many
Mhm.
times in this podcast as what we do and what we're about. But if you are a builder and you are on, you have to be on a chain or you want to have a multi-chain strategy. At this point, you need a multi-chain strategy. Even if you don't want to deploy on multiple chains, you want to tap into the liquidity from other chains and let users come to whatever dApp or project you're building, because liquidity being so fragmented, and let's say that you're building on optimism, why wouldn't you want to grab users from Ethereum mainnet or Arbitrum or Polygon? And you can only do this by having the best swap and bridge modularity on your website. So, by having LIFI, and LIFI is so modular that you can have, the widget, the SDK, or the API if you are an institutional wallet, if you are a stablecoin provider, if you are a lending and borrowing market, if if you want to have, you just want to build the good zapping infrastructure, then you can use LIFI, and you should use LIFI.
Absolutely. So they can get in touch with you directly via your website, I guess, Li.fi.
Yeah, so you can get in touch directly with us on our website. There's a form contact, or you can just hit me up on Telegram. Andrei LI.FI is my Telegram ID, or we have an email, sales@li.finance. There's many ways to get in touch with us. Even DMing us on Twitter, someone will respond and will put you in contact with the right BD or developer relations or product people. So we are very responsive, and we have a very good reputation in the industry for being very responsive, because we need to be fast. We're serving our users. Users come first for us, and clients come first for us.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, we'll put all these links inside the comments, so if everyone want to get in touch with you guys, they will be facilitated. And before we going toward the hands, is there anything that you want to add? Anything maybe we didn't touch yet? It's extremely interesting for LIFI.
I mean, I think we've touched, on everything that's important. I don't want to emphasize on the point that liquidity is very fragmented in this industry, and at one point everyone realizes that I need a multi-chain strategy, I need a cross-chain strategy, and that's when they realize that they need LIFI. I've seen in so many occasions, clients, not responding for months, and then coming back to us and saying that, hey, we're ready to integrate LIFI because we realize that we need such a widget or such an API for our dApp.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you. It's already so difficult to attract liquidity. If you make it also difficult for users to bring liquidity, right? What will be the point? So you need to make it as fast, as seamless as possible. So when this is happening. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Andrei, for this fantastic chat. Thanks a lot for sharing more about your background and also about LIFI, and give us the possibility to understand more about these incredible interoperability solution offered by you. And in general, for all the builders that are listening to this podcast, if they're building in DeFi and real-world assets, if they are excited about the possibility of shaping a better, a fairer, a more equitable financial system, they should also get in touch with us at HyperNest.xyz. You can also connect us with on Twitter, for example, or anywhere else. Thanks again for your time, Andrei. Very excited for the future of LIFI, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for having me. This has been great. Great questions. I actually enjoyed this a lot, and thank you for offering the opportunity of having a stage and sharing more about LIFI.